Hi, my name's Stephen Hand. Today I want to talk about the ban on bow hunting. Now, I've mentioned this before, but it's all sort of starting to happen. The ban on bow hunting in my state in South Australia is about to take effect on the 1st of December. So I want to talk a little bit about it and where things are up to and all that sort of stuff. But when I think about this, a lot of people are going to be anti-hunting. Okay, so a lot of my friends are vegans and they're very much opposed to killing animals. Okay, so I want to just talk a bit about that and my views on things and where I stand on this, and you can make up your own mind. Right, so I want to start off with my friends who are vegans, okay, because they are very passionate about not killing animals, and that's okay, right? So that's my first, where I want to start at. And I think that's cool. I think it's cool that you don't like killing animals. I don't like killing animals. I don't like it, right? So that's my position. However, I do like eating meat. I do like the taste of meat. I do like the amount of protein I get from meat. I do like meat, okay? And I do think, can I become a vegetarian? And I have been to vegetarian restaurants and some of them have been very good. But overall, I just find meat a good source of protein and health, and there's a whole bunch of things about vegetables and stuff, and I think it's kind of hard to get enough goodness just from vegetables, and I think that would be hard for me, okay? So I'm just saying that out front, but I do appreciate the vegan stance, okay? So that's where I'm going to sort of start at. Now, just on the vegan stance, I want to talk about that whole thing about being a vegan. So you've still got to get vegetables and nuts and fruit, right? Well, those farmers who are harvesting the nuts and fruits are still killing animals. They're still killing rabbits, they're still killing foxes, they're still shooting the deers. People who grow vines are still shooting deers, killing foxes, killing rabbits, killing birds. If you've got an almond farm, you're shooting the cockatoos. There's a lot of animals dying, right? So while you sit there and go, well, actually, I'm not into killing animals, that's cool, I'm going to still say a shit ton of animals are dying, right? Whether you believe it or not, that's just the way it is. Now, the other component when I think about this, I do think about studies I watch about animals fertilizing the ground. Okay, so that's the stuff that comes out the back end of the animals, and how it refurbishes the ground and drops fertilizer onto the soil, and the land improves if it's got agriculture occurring on the site. So if you've got goats, sheep, cows and stuff grazing, the quality of the soil improves. And there's a whole thing about crop rotation and running animals and then running crops, and there's a whole bunch of that sort of stuff that this is good for farming, right? And I've watched studies in Africa which have been desert, and they put animals in there and then it turns into farmland, okay? So because the animals fertilize the ground, and then green grass comes up, then more animals, and then more green grass. And in Australia, we've got like saltbush, and there's areas, rural Australia, where you've got saltbush and there's lots of goats, and the goats eat this saltbush. And farmers used to say it's a really bad thing having goats, and used to hunt them, okay? Because there was so many goats, and the goats were eating all the food for the sheep, and this was a really bad thing. This is back when I was young. Now it's come to the conclusion, actually, the goats are really good because they eat the saltbush, which is a weed, and they eat the weeds, and the whole quality of the land improves, and now the farmers round up the goats and farm them and sell them off. So this raises the whole issue then. Really the question gets back to, well, you've got two questions. One, farming animals versus farming vegetables. Okay, so you've got that debate. Wherever you sit with this, I'm fine, right? Then I've got another debate. Are you better to hunt versus farm animals? So to feed a human, you need 4 deer a year to produce enough meat for one person, right? So the question comes, well, where are you going to get your meat from? Either the grocery store or you've got to hunt it. And that gets to an ethical question of whether it's better to hunt versus, taking your produce to an abattoir. Now, I've seen the abattoirs or whatever you want to call them, and it just doesn't look that nice. I understand it's a need. The animals look stressed, and I'm going to say a whole bunch of hunters and a whole bunch of friends believe they don't buy anything from the grocery store. They hunt all their own food. Okay, so they butcher so many deer a year, they freeze it all, and that's what they eat. They believe it's healthier for them because there's no stuff put into the meat. They believe the meat tastes better. They believe the animal's not stressed because it doesn't know it's been shot when it's shot, and hence it doesn't go through the whole process of stress, and the stress apparently puts stuff into the meat to make the meat less tender. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of people who have this view. Now, I don't know. I've had hunted meat and I've had normal meat, and I'm going to say the hunted meat was fine. I've had normal meat that's been fine. I've had normal meat which has been really tough, right? I'm going to say, to do with fishing, and you're going to say, what's fishing got to do with hunting? It's much easier to buy a fish from a store than to go and fish it. Much easier. And I'm going to say it's more ethical to probably fish a fish than to have it netted off these big rigs that go through the ocean and just pull up everything off the floor of the ocean. And on the same, there's the phone, right? So this gets to the thing: are you better to fish an item or to have someone fish it for you? Now, if you're going to compare commercial fishing where they just have big nets come through versus the person who goes out there and fishes with a rod, you can say what's more ethical. And I think the same applies with hunting. Whether a pig or a deer sits in a cage and is farmed and then is taken to an abattoir and is processed versus an animal that is shot. Okay, so I've got that whole argument. Now, there's the question about feral animals, right? So the other day, well, you've got how are you going to manage feral animals? So you've got poisoning. Poisoning is horrible. It's a terrible, terrible thing. And when the animal eats poison, the poison is then transferred through to the next animal. So if a fox eats poison or your dog eats poison, it dies. And then the next animal, like the birds, will then also die. And then the next bird will also die. Or the lizard will die. And it creates this whole thing of death. Okay, so I'm not keen on poisons. All right. So then you've got the government who thinks, well, helicopters are a great idea. We're just going to go through and slaughter a whole bunch of deer using a helicopter from up high in the sky. Now, this happened about 4 weeks ago. A whole bunch of deer was slaughtered using a helicopter in a local park here. And I'm going to say 200 odd deer was shot and left. So they were shot the deer, just left them, and a whole bunch of deer was wounded. Is that better than a hunter coming through and either taking one shot, killing one deer, and then harvesting the meat and the skin? Right? This is what you have to think about when you think about this debate, I think, and you can make your view on what you think is correct and thing. My view is, I think if you harvest the meat ethically, when I say ethically, you make a good shot, you know what you're doing, I have no issue. So when I shot a pig, basically I thought I missed at 20 meters. I can pretty much hit my own arrow. I thought I missed. The arrow went straight through the pig. There was about 40-50 pigs in this green grass area. They ran past me, literally right alongside my leg. I didn't know what was happening, and they went to this grassy area and they started grazing. And I was 20 meters away. I took the shot and it went straight through the pig. I thought it missed. So I was like, how did I miss? And I was really confused because no pig saw me, which is crazy because they ran past me, but they didn't pay any attention to me. And basically when I made the shot, no pig even looked at me. Like they just kept grazing. The pig I shot kept grazing. So that was crazy. And anyway, after the pig dropped and all that sort of stuff, there was blood. The arrow went straight through the animal. and the animal didn't even know it had been hit. It continued grazing, and that was pretty much it. And I was shocked. Now, I don't hunt a lot because for me to go hunting requires time and effort, and for me, whether it's right or wrong, that's another question for me, and I do think about this. I'm more than happy just to go and buy it from the grocery store. But I've got a whole bunch of customers who produce sausages, produce metwurst, produce the skins, the horns, and they use the whole animal, and I think it's amazing. And I've got a whole bunch of customers, I'm going to say a whole bunch of customers who own land. They don't want to own guns because they don't like guns. And they own crossbows and bows, and they shoot the foxes because the foxes kill the lambs. The foxes kill their chickens. They want to be self-sustainable. I've got customers who the whole family, when I say the whole family hunt, they want the whole family to understand where food comes from. So they know how to hunt, they know how to skin, they know how to produce vegetables, they know how to be self-sufficient. And it's a thing the whole family gets brought up. It's a way of life for them. Now, with the government's ban on bow hunting, what they're saying is on your own property, because it's your own property that we're talking about here, we do not allow you to bow hunt. Okay, so that's what the government's saying. Now, there was a committee formed to discuss this, and I'm going to say it was formed with a very stacked body of people from the Labor Party, which is our left, and the RSPCA. And I was like, well, this is going to be a self-determined board, which is going to say bow hunting is banned. That's what I thought, right? I submitted a 15-page report to them, and I never heard anything back. They called in a whole bunch of people to talk on the subject. Now, to my surprise, the committee advised, and this is a committee of the left, a couple of people on the right, but bulk of the people on the left, and the RSPCA, the animal libertarian group who basically wanted this ban to be brought in, found that there was no case for banning bow hunting. There'd been no complaints. It was seen to be ethical. It was seen to be just as efficient as a gun. And you can argue the whole gun point versus bow hunting till your thing comes home. But there was a whole bunch of reports produced from all around the world, and the committee basically concluded there was no premise to ban bow hunting. Well, Labor said, up that, we're banning it, right? So we're going to tell you what you can do on your own property. Okay, right. So the fine is going to be up to $1,000 if you're caught bow hunting on your own property. Okay, right. Now the other things in here, in this jungle of mess, currently in our state or in Australia, if you're Aboriginal, so if you're a native person of Australia, you're allowed to hunt. You're allowed to hunt anywhere. You're allowed to hunt native parks, state forests, all that sort of stuff. You're allowed to hunt. That's to my opinion. And I've got a whole bunch of Indigenous people who hunt for food, right? A whole bunch of them. And they're generally in country areas, right? I'm going to say not many in the city, but generally country areas, middle of nowhere. They hunt for food. They shoot kangaroos. You're not allowed to shoot kangaroos if you're white. If you're native, you're allowed to. Okay, so because it's a native animal. In Australia, if you're non-Indigenous, you're only allowed to shoot feral animals, not natives. But if you're Indigenous, you're allowed to shoot native animals, right? Because that's part of your culture. Well, under this change, Indigenous people are not going to be allowed to bow hunt. So what you're saying to an Indigenous person, you're allowed to knock them over the head with a stick. You're allowed to throw a stick, a spear, at a kangaroo or a deer or a rabbit. That's okay. Or a boomerang. That's okay. That's perfectly ethical, but you're not allowed to shoot them with an arrow. Okay? So therefore what you're saying to Indigenous people is, well, you've got to get yourself a gun. I don't know how you feel about that. I've got Indigenous groups in my state who they teach kids, Indigenous kids, to bow hunt, to take food, to butcher food, to take skins. This is what they're teaching, right? And then the kids turn up to school because they're interested. They like the whole hunting thing. They like the whole thing of being self-sufficient. It's a good thing. And then the government just goes, nah, bugger that. We have a whole bunch of problems with Indigenous people in Australia. A whole bunch of problems, and I'm not going to go into that, but health, education, going to schools. We have endless problems with Indigenous communities of Australia, and hunting, getting boys, and I'm going to say boys into hunting, girls hunt, but getting boys into hunting. Look, if boys keep out of trouble, if they're interested in something, this is a good thing. Now, I've got a whole bunch of, I'm going to say friends, people, customers. I've been selling archery gear for 40 years who hunt animals. They like doing it. They like getting out in the bush. They like harvesting a deer, bringing home the meat, bringing home the skin. They don't do drugs. This is their form of recreation. You're going to say, well, that's not good. That'd be better to play a game of football. Okay. However, they are taking meat as opposed to going to the grocery store and buying meat. So they're saving money. They're feeding their family. And you've got this whole debate about whether it's ethical or not. They're making sausages and metwurst and stuff. I think it's cool. I do have an issue with governments telling us how we should live our life when there is no evidence one way or the other. And people are going to say, well, there is evidence. Bow hunting is perfectly fine. Well, that's okay, right? That's what the committee said. But then the government goes, no, what was the point of having the committee? What was the point of having all these people together and having all these people come in and talk, having all these people submit papers if you're going to go up your bum? We're going to do what we want because we want to be seen to be inclusive and we want to seem to listen to people. Well, no, that's bullshit. You don't want to listen to anyone, right? You don't want to listen. You don't want to have a debate. You just want to impose your will, and I have a real issue with this. I would have thought it would have been fair to say, look, we want to manage the deer population in South Australia. We have a deer population issue in South Australia where in native parks or native lands there's too many deer. So what we could do is we can count the number of deer, we can monitor it, we can have a hunting season. In America, you hunt with a bow 2 weeks before the gun season. It's a thing. It creates a whole thing. You have licenses. I mean, one of my friends in America goes into a lottery to shoot. It's some sort of wild sheep. There's one taken a year in this area, and if you don't get it in the 2 weeks, you miss out, right? And his chances of shooting one are apparently quite rare. But you go in, you pay money to shoot this wild sheep, whether you think this is a good idea or not. But all this money goes into the native parks in America. And when I go in there, when I went into America and I saw these native parks where they have conservation hunting, it's amazing. There's money, there's tourists. I saw heaps of deer. I saw the wild sheep. These wild, big, long sheep. I saw like 50 of them. Apparently it's very, very, very rare. And they're very hard to find. And there was 50 of them. But it wasn't hunting season. It was, the breeding season or whatever. But it was amazing. And they've got these paths all through this wildlife reserve. It's amazing. But it's all monitored, because if you don't control the numbers, then it causes mass die-outs. If the old ones don't die, then they'll die a terrible death. Things are managed. If you've got a wounded one, because when deer fight, they get wounded. It's just to leave wildlife to its own virtues. I don't know if that's ethical or not. I have so many people who tell me about all their chickens being killed, all their baby lambs being killed. Anyway, I'm going to leave you with that. So at the moment, there's a petition, which you can just basically tick on, and I think if it gets enough signatures. So today, the petition came out, and by 1 o'clock, there was 1,500 signatures. So I'm doing this video to just put a link to the petition. Okay? Now, you may not agree with bow hunting, you may not agree with killing animals, you may be a vegan. That's okay. That's okay. I don't have any issues with that. And you're completely entitled into your views. When I sit here and I shoot archery, I sit here and watch both sides of arguments while I'm sitting here shooting and learning about stuff, because I sit here and shoot for 2 to 3 hours. Now, hunters are going to say, Stephen, you're not a hunter. And that's perfectly fine. I've hunted twice, 3 times in my life with my dad, 4 times. Look, it's an interesting experience. I'm not going to say I like or dislike it. I know a bunch of people who love it. Love it. They don't do drugs. They don't drink. They work hard, and they go out once a year, and it's a thing. And when I say it's a thing, I think the mindset is, because they tell me how it is, the mindset is I've got to have gear that is, I've got to be accurate. I've got to have gear that kills the animal quickly. So it's got to be effective, and they train. It's like a whole process of training, setting up your gear, going out in the middle of whoop whoop to try and get this thing. And I'm going to say it's very hot, and it's in the middle of nowhere, and it's a thing. It's an adventure, and you're just going to say, well, they can go to a theme park and stuff, but it's something different, and they enjoy it, and I'm like, they're not doing anyone any harm. And basically, the amount of money which they pay to do it, that money goes to a guide, so there's a guide with them all the time to take them out. It goes to the farm, the money goes to the farm to manage the farm, to improve stuff. They manage the farm numbers. I failed to see the negative sides, and that could be me. But the alternative is that a guy sits there with a gun and goes, bang, 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 we're going to kill those wild pigs. Or the alternative is someone comes up from Adelaide by a plane to Queensland, and they shoot a pig, and they go fishing, or they shoot a deer, and they take the meat, they take the skin, they have trophies, and it's a whole thing for them, and they just spent $6,000. Right? There's a whole other thing that people want to be self-sufficient. I cannot tell you, especially in COVID, how many people wanted to be self-sufficient. And today, so many people want to be self-sufficient. So, and what the government's doing is they're taking that away. I don't think it's cool, but anyway, I'm going to leave you with that. That's my take on it all. I'll probably get lots of hate from it, but that's my take on it. Like I said, I generally don't fish. I did fish with my grandfather, and that was a good experience. I feel that I should have hunted with my son. Not that it's a rite of passage or anything. It's just like, it's something that I did with my dad. It wasn't a particularly pleasant experience. And there was rain, there was hot and cold. I got lost. I was in this mountain range. I was tracking a herd of goats. It was an experience that I won't forget. Just that whole thing of being out in the middle of nowhere, not seeing anything, and then when you see something, it's like, oh, this is amazing. And most times the people won't shoot. They just won't shoot because they won't be in a position to make the shot. I think it's amazing. I think it's amazing. But anyway, I understand different people's views. I just disagree with the government just ignoring part of the thing. And maybe there's just too many people now who think hunting's bad and farming animals is better. And I don't know if it is. I really don't. I've seen the videos of farming animals. It just doesn't look better than a wild animal grazing who is shot with an arrow, who doesn't even know it's been shot, and just dies from blood loss. They don't even know it's a surgical strike. They just literally dying. It's a very quick death, and they don't even know. They keep eating. It's just, I know which way I'd prefer to go. I would prefer to be wild. I would prefer to be shot. Not knowing I've been shot, I think, is better than going on a truck. I've seen all the stress. You say, Steve, you should be a vegan. Oh, your meat tastes so good. It really does. Anyway, I'll leave you with that. And also on the ethical part, and I've been there before, I don't know if being a vegan is better for the environment than animals, because every video I see on farming animals says it's good for the land. That's what I see. That if you want to improve the soil quality, then you need to farm. You need crop rotations, you need animals. That's just what I read. Like, I love the idea of natural farms. I'll leave you with that. Thanks for watching.